Good news. Firearms are officially part of the 2024 Player's Handbook for D&D 5e. What? That's terrible news. Get your gunpowder out of my high fantasy, you heathen. Okay, I actually kind of used to feel that way, but guess what? Firearms aren't exactly as amazing as even lovers of the weapons might want them to be in D&D 5e. But hey, even if you aren't a fan of pistols and muskets, the ranged build that we've put together for today is totally doable with other ranged weapons instead if you want. But with them, it's really quite good. So I hope that you will stay tuned to check it out. Welcome to D4. Hey everybody, so here at D4 each week I take a deep dive into a specific character build for my favorite role-playing games, usually D&D, not always. I like to crunch numbers about them, theorycraft about them, not so that I can tell you the right way or the definitive best way to play a certain character, but to explore one potential way to build something in the hopes of creating a character that's both really fun but also really powerful to play. So if you also enjoy creating characters for your favorite role-playing games, or if you really like theory crafting, or if you're just looking for tips or ideas on how to build something that you're thinking about playing, then welcome home. This is where you belong, and I'm so glad you're here. So thank you for watching. My name's Colby. Okay, so look, ranged weapon users are hurting a bit in 2024 5e rules damage-wise. I went into this in greater detail in my recent Beastmaster build, so I'm not going to rehash the entire preamble here. I understand why Wizards of the Coast might have decided that ranged weapon users should do less damage than melee users, but even if they do less damage on average overall than melee weapon users, it's not going to stop me from trying to build good ranged weapon using characters. Because A, it's a fun archetype and concept to build around, and B, being able to attack from relative safety and more easily pick your targets as a ranged weapon user is still a strong character mechanically. They bring a level of survivability and target selecting power that melee weapon users have a hard time matching. So yeah, I'll keep doing my best to stretch that ranged weapon damage in a build once in a while as best I can for the foreseeable future. Enter then firearms. Longtime viewers of the channel may remember that I resisted doing firearms builds for a long time here. That was for two reasons, really. One, I personally didn't love the idea of even like an 18th century era gunpowder weapon showing up in my D&D game, where I tend to prefer a more medieval, high fantasy setting. But also, in 2014, firearms didn't show up in the Player's Handbook. They were listed as kind of optional things in the Dungeon Master's Guide, and so felt like something not every table would be able to play with. I think I kind of changed my mind about them around the time Tasha's Cauldron of Everything came out, as that introduced the gunner feat and sort of legitimized firearms a bit more as something that players should really be able to use if they wanted to, so I started using them occasionally. Now, in the 2024 Player's Handbook, Wizards of the Coast has gone even a step further and straight up included firearms, specifically the pistol and the musket as martial ranged weapons, complete with corresponding weapon masteries and everything. When I saw that, my first thought was, okay, cool, but also now firearms are going to become like the de facto ranged weapon for aspiring Legolases because of their better damage die, right? But upon further reflection, I think firearms might be among the weaker options for ranged weapon users. Why? It has to do primarily with the changes to the Sharpshooter and Great Weapon Master feats. As most of you know, Sharpshooter no longer gives a -5 to hit +10 to damage for ranged weapon users, right? In fact, it gives no kind of increase to the damage you do on a hit benefit at all. The Great Weapon Master, on the other hand, while sure it also lost the -5 to hit +10 to damage, it gained extra damage on a hit equal to your proficiency bonus. What's more, we can use the Great Weapon Master feat on weapons so long as they're simply heavy. They don't have to be melee like they used to be, meaning that heavy ranged weapons like the longbow and the heavy crossbow can benefit. Yay. But guess what weapons are not considered heavy? Yeah, firearms. I know, I was kind of shocked too. Not even the musket. It weighs 10 pounds and the longbow only weighs 2. What the crap, Wizards? I actually get it. The longbow itself might not weigh a ton, but you would need to have a decent strength in order to draw the bow back, maybe even just a little bit more to get the most out of the attack, right? Even though it is possible to dual wield like hand crossbows now, if you have the crossbow expert feat anyways, Pistols are not considered light weapons and so cannot be dual wielded. So it's like the two setups that you might want to do with ranged weapons are not viable with firearms. So does this mean that firearms builds are DOA, dead on arrival, doomed to be inferior to other ranged weapon builds? Not necessarily. I mean, they do have the higher damage die going for them and some interesting mastery options. So today I'm going to try to make the best damage dealing firearm user that I can. I want to see how they compare to the other ranged weapon user that I've done so far. There's just one, right? That Beastmaster build. That build did use Great Weapon Master, and I maybe want to take a slightly unconventional approach to a class concept while I'm at it, because the build today is going to be, that's right, a gunk. A gun-wielding monk, sort of like the original gunk build that I did back in the day. Well, okay, asterisk. It's going to be mostly a gunk, up through tier 2. All right, are you ready to jump in? I proudly present D&D episode number 197, the 2024 Gunk 2.0, the Spell Shot. I kind of like that. Happiness is a warm gunk. Bullet punch. The Fistolier. I like that. It makes me a little uncomfortable, though. How about Snake Eyes? I wore the shirt. I mean, he was kind of a ninja, and he used an Uzi. I don't know if the concept would really work if I wanted to call it Snake Eyes. The Iron Fist. Pancho Villa. The Pugilist. That one was really good. I am going to have to use some of these in the various thumbnails. Thanks to the Discord users. You guys knocked it out of the park this week. How about we go with Gunfu Part 2? Thanks to Inothe Strife, Jason, for the inspiration there. Huge thanks to my good friend Randall Hampton for the fantastic artwork that he put together for this build. He does this every week. If you guys would be interested in following him on social media to see the other artwork that he's created, or maybe even to reach out and see if you could commission him to create some art for your character or even your entire party, I'll put links in the video description as always on how to do so. And first, I am super excited to tell you guys about today's sponsor, Event Cruises, because they are a company I've been wanting to check out myself for quite some time, and I'm hoping that maybe they'll just let me be like a special guest on one of their cruises sometime. So yes, Event Cruises. These guys provide themed cruise conventions, and they look fantastic. They currently have 3. GaoCon is a game and cosplay cruise, looks especially fun for anime fans. The Battle Barge cruise is especially for Warhammer lovers. Ooh, I wonder if Henry Cavill's going to be on the one they're doing in October. But the one I am most interested in, and I'm guessing most of you would be too, is the D20 cruise. This looks so fun. Several days at sea, visiting Caribbean islands, surrounded by other TTRPG aficionados? Yes, please. Can we play a pirate-themed campaign, though, por favor? On this cruise, you'll find not only a dedicated gaming area with sessions of D&D offered for anyone who wants to play, and all editions of D&D are on the offer, it looks like, which is cool if you wanted to play an older version. But also, there will be workshops on helping you be a better world builder, workshops on helping you be a better DM, and on character creation. I want to lead that workshop. As well as miniature painting supplies and workshops, appearances by celebrity DMs, live entertainment, and even a board and card game and comic and manga library when you need a break from your campaign. So, listen, there's a D20 cruise currently happening in mid-April that's headed to Haiti and the Bahamas, and tickets are still available. I think you should go to the URL that I've linked in the video description and the pinned comment and sign up for an amazing vacation. Or at the very least, check them out. Sign up for their newsletter, join their Discord server so that you can at least think about it. Ask some questions, figure out if it's something you could make happen, or if you can't this time, stay in the know for a future event that might work out better for you. I'm seriously going to try and get on one of these events if I can. I have friends who've done stuff like this and they've had an absolute blast. Oh, and here's some good news. If you'd like to travel with someone who's not necessarily into TTRPGs themselves, like my wife, for example, no worries. There's still a ton to do on the cruise that they'll love. I mean, onshore excursions, spa treatments, live entertainment, great food, everything cruises always have to offer. So bring them along and let them soak up the sun while you get your gaming on. One last thing. If you decide to take the plunge, use the code D4 at checkout to save $50 off your event pass. You're welcome. Big thanks to Event Cruises. Here's hoping that I will be sailing with you guys soon, and that some of my viewers will too. So, okay, let's jump into the build. But first, sorry, really quick, just some housekeeping stuff. I'm going to kind of be taking some time off for the holidays here over the next couple of weeks. Merry Christmas, by the way, if you're watching this on Christmas or on Christmas Eve or shortly after. But yeah, I'm not planning on doing like a regular full build video for the next couple of weeks, but I actually will be doing some other stuff. I'll probably put out my annual top 10 meanest comments video sometime here soon. I might be going live to chat with some people. Stay tuned for some exciting announcements there. I might even have a little Monster Manual sneak peek video at some point. So stay tuned for some cool, fun, maybe more laid back stuff. Just don't expect like a character build until mid-January. Okay, level 1 for this build. For our starting class, we are going to start fighter because of course we are. Okay, I could actually see starting ranger here instead if you wanted. We really want proficiency in martial weapons, weapon masteries, and a fighting style. We could get everything but the fighting style with just a single level ranger dip and pick up some spells too. But like Hunter's Mark isn't really going to be a long-term option for this build. The bonus action to cast it and transfer it is just too high a price to pay, I think. And I'd just as soon get what I need with a single level dip fighter as opposed to 2 if I really wanted a fighting style, which I'd need to do in ranger, right? So for us, fighter it is. For our species, I want to go elf for the build today, but the main reason is, as usual when I go elf, to get the elven accuracy feat. So if you can't or don't want to use elven accuracy, that's fine. Feel free to take just about anything else, honestly. I think my 2 other favorites here would probably be halfling for luck or maybe human for an extra origin feat. If you go elf, for our subspecies, I'd probably take high elf. They all get some nice benefits, but high elves get a wizard cantrip of their choice, and then at level 3 they get the detect magic spell, and at level 5 they get misty step, which is just so nice to have when you really need it. But you know, drow and wood elf are also great lineages. For our background, as always, I'm going to say, take an old one and customize it, or just make a custom background if you can. If you can't, or you don't want to, the Wayfarer background suits our purposes fine. The origin feat that I'd most want here is Magic Initiate Wizard, I think. So if you can go custom or old, maybe grab that so that we can get 2 cantrips of our choice. That's 3 cantrips now, nice. And find Familiar as our spell that feat would give us so that we can potentially get advantage on our first attack every round with our Familiar taking the help action, among other things. But if your DM tends to kill off your Familiar or doesn't like letting it just give kind of whoever it wants advantage on an attack, right? Or if you're forced to pick a set background from the 2024 Player's Handbook, the Lucky Feat via Wayfarer is a decent backup plan to give us advantage, proficiency bonus times per day on an attack or save of our choice. For our starting ability scores, I'm going to assume we go point by as always and say let's get a 15 dexterity, take a +2 there, a 15 wisdom and a +1, and then a 14 constitution. As a ranged weapon user that's going to have monk levels, that's all fairly self-explanatory, I think. As for starting equipment, we're going to want to get a pistol if we can somehow convince our DM to let us have one at level 1. They cost 250 gold, but if not, a heavy crossbow will work fine for now as we're saving our money. Now, why a pistol and not a musket? Muskets do a d12 of damage, the highest of any ranged weapon in the game, versus the pistol's d10. Well, it's for one simple reason. Weapon masteries, which we get at Fighter 1, and the musket has the slow mastery, which is nice and sometimes useful, but the pistol gets Vex, which says that when we hit with the weapon and are masters of it, our next attack before the end of our next turn is made with advantage, which means that we can potentially give ourselves advantage several times per round between either lucky and our familiar and then getting Vex from the pistol, right? And that's just really nice, especially as a ranged weapon user, because see, while getting advantage as a melee weapon user is easier than it's ever been in 2024, I think, thanks mostly to how many more ways we have to knock enemies prone, but also thanks to the grappler feat, among other things. As a ranged weapon user, it can be pretty tough to get advantage still. Vex is a really nice way to help us out there, and is going to make the slightly lower damage die of the pistol totally worth trading for. We get 3 masteries though, so feel free to take 1 in the heavy crossbow or the longbow if you like, or sure, maybe the dagger if you'd rather be throwing, or like the short sword and scimitar if you need to be in melee sometimes. We also get a fighting style at Fighter 1, as I've said, and we are taking archery. Of course, it's still the best fighting style for damage in the game, though maybe less good these days with the change to sharpshooter. Still, a +2 to hit on all of our ranged weapon attacks is really nice. And then fighters also get second wind, which tells us that twice per day, recovering 1 use on a short rest, we can, with a bonus action, heal ourselves for a d10 plus our fighter level, and that's nice. You know what else is nice? My channel members. You guys, you're so awesome. Thank you for your support. I could not do this without you. I mean that when I say it. And for those of you who are not members, I would love it if you'd consider joining. There's a button down there. It says join. You click it and it will tell you the little benefits that you get by being a member. You can get access to the library of write-ups that I do for each of these builds to help you recreate the character a little more easily yourself without having to take notes or go back and rewatch the video. You can get access to the D4 community Discord server filled with lots of amazing, awesome people, and even access to the live monthly Q&A hangout sessions that we do. But if you're not able to or interested in becoming a member, that's fine. I appreciate that you're here watching, liking, subscribing, clicking the notifications bell, commenting, all the things. Those are also great ways to support the channel, so thanks. Okay, at level 2, with the most important stuff we needed from Fighter under our belts, it is time to multiclass. And yeah, as I've said, we are going to be a gunk, so we're taking some monk levels here. Why is your character going from the soldier or guard or city watch fighter life to that of a monk now? I don't know. Maybe they have some PTSD from a really traumatic battle and decided to sequester themselves in a monastery for a while to find some peace. Perhaps your commander has heard whispers of a monastery that's unlocked the secret of what's being called black powder, and they've sent you there to infiltrate and see what you can learn. Perhaps, more importantly, for the purposes of this video, why are we going monk mechanically? Shouldn't we just stay fighter and get extra attack and more feats and action surge? You could, and it's not a bad idea, honestly. But for me, the big question with, well, any build really, but especially a ranged weapon build, I think, is what are we doing with our bonus action? Heavy ranged weapon users don't benefit from the Great Weapon Master feat on attacks other than those made with the attack action. And firearms, as I've kind of talked about, somewhat damningly, are neither heavy, meaning no Great Weapon Master feat for us, nor are they light, meaning we can't dual wield them either. But what class then gets super easy access to bonus action attacks based potentially on their dexterity? Yeah, monks. Wait a sec. I thought we were doing a ranged damage dealer here. Unarmed strikes? We are. Just hold your horses. Okay. At Monk 1, we get a couple of features. Unarmored defense lets our AC be equal to our dexterity plus our wisdom modifier so long as we are unarmored and unshielded, and we want to be unarmored and unshielded, so it's time to doff that armor if you've been using any thus far. But then we also get martial arts, which tells us that so long as we're unshielded and unarmored and wielding monk weapons only, we can make an unarmed strike as a bonus action, which is a d6 for us, scaling with monk level, and can be made with our dexterity instead of strength for our plus to hit and damage. Wait a sec, pistols aren't monk weapons. Monk weapons are only simple melee and martial melee weapons with the light property. You are correct, naysayer. But keep in mind, we can benefit from martial arts so long as we are not wielding non-monk weapons. Doesn't say that we can't have used them or anything. And thankfully, drawing and stowing weapons is easier than ever in 2024. We can draw or stow a weapon as part of an attack we make with it. Plus, we still have a free interaction once per turn, which can be used to draw or stow. So now, on our turn, we can draw our pistol with a free action, make an attack, stow it as part of that attack, and now we're not wielding any non-monk weapons and are thus free to make an unarmed strike as a bonus action if we'd like. Cool? Cool. At level 3, we would be a monk 2, and that means we get monk's focus. We get 1 focus point per monk level, and they reset on a short rest. We can use them for one of 3 things. Step of the Wind to dash as a bonus action, and also disengage if we spend a focus point. Patient Defense to disengage as a bonus action, and also dodge if we spend a focus point. And Flurry of Blows to make 2 unarmed strikes as a bonus action instead of 1. Very nice. We also get unarmored movement here, adding 10 feet to our speed if we're unarmored and unshielded. Very handy. And even uncanny metabolism, which says that once per day, when we roll initiative, we can regain all spent focus points and heal ourselves for a roll of our martial arts die plus our monk level. Man, I love this feature. Feels like we'll almost always have focus points when we need them, unless you're having a particularly punishing, no rest kind of day. At level 4, we would be a monk 3. And that means we get deflect attacks, which is amazing, letting us use our reaction when hit by a bludgeoning, piercing, or slashing damage attack to reduce that damage by a d10 plus our dexterity modifier plus our monk level. And it even lets us spend a focus point if we reduce it to 0 to hurt another enemy. I generally advise holding on to those focus points unless you feel confident that the damage returned will just take an enemy out. But then we also get our subclass here. And we are going with, yes, the new and improved Warrior of the Elements. Why? Well, because as some of you were yelling at me about earlier, I know you were, don't pretend, this is supposed to be a ranged build, and elemental monks get the amazing elemental attunement feature, which says that at the start of our turn, we can spend a focus point to imbue ourselves with elemental energy. This imbuement lasts for 10 minutes, or until we're incapacitated, and lets our unarmed strikes have a reach that is 10 feet greater than normal. So instead of punching and kicking from 5 feet away, we're essentially hurling elemental energy up to 15 feet away, and that is just freaking awesome. Because, yeah, we're told that when we hit with those unarmed strikes, we can cause them to deal acid, cold, fire, lightning, or thunder damage rather than bludgeoning, which I'm confident will come in handy a lot. And then we can even force the enemy we hit to make a strength save, and if they fail, we can move them 10 feet toward or away from us. This will be really nice for those times that an ally has set up some sort of hazard that we can push or pull enemies into, or when fighting on a bridge or near a cliff, or for those times when an enemy is all up in our business and we want to get some space before pulling out our pistol so we aren't making attacks with disadvantage, right? And yeah, with Flurry of Blows, that means we can now be making 2 ranged attacks with our bonus action, so long as we've got the focus points for it and we've put our pistol away. Maybe my favorite part of all of this, though, it kind of gives this character a gishy feel to it, right? They're not actually casting spells, but hurling fire or lightning with your fists feels pretty magic-y to me. And I mean, we do have a few cantrips and a familiar and elf spells. So yeah, you're not really a spell sword, but more like a spell bow or a spell shot. Sure, I like that. Oh, element monks also get manipulate elements here, which just lets us have the elementalism cantrip for some nice little utility and roleplay. That's 4 cantrips now. Woohoo! At level 5, we would be a monk 4, which gives us slow fall. This lets us use our reaction when we fall to reduce any potential falling damage by 5 times our monk level, letting us often just land like a cat on our feet. No harm done. And then we get our first general feat. Unfortunately, I kind of think we gotta take the gunner feat here. Extra attack is coming, and since firearms have both the ammunition and loading properties, if we don't have the gunner feat, we can't make more than 1 attack on our turn with the gun, even if we have extra attack, right? So yeah, this was from Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. It is a half feat, lets us bump our dexterity by 1, so that's nice, puts it at 18. And then just says we can ignore the loading property with firearms, and when we make ranged attacks against enemies within 5 feet of us, we don't have disadvantage anymore, so that's nice. It's a little bit of a necessary evil for this build. I think that loading property is kind of a stickler. I mean, I guess technically we could ignore it, just make 1 attack with our pistol on our turn, and then start making unarmed attacks, but the pistol has a higher damage die, and the Vex Weapon Mastery, which is going to keep our advantage going potentially, and we'll especially like that once we get Elven Accuracy, right? But at level 6, we would be a Monk 5, and that means we get Stunning Strike, which says that once per turn when we hit with a monk weapon or unarmed strike, we can spend a focus point to try and stun the target. They make a Constitution save, and if they fail, they're stunned until the start of our next turn. Stunning an enemy is awesome when we can pull it off. Super frustrating when it fails. At least if they succeed now, they have their move speed halved, and the next attack against them has advantage. Worth using sometimes if you feel like you've got a decent chance of stunning them. But then, yeah, even more importantly, at this level, we get extra attack so that we can make a couple of pistol attacks on our turn every time we take the attack action. Don't forget as well, our martial arts die goes up to a d8, so those unarmed strikes are hitting just a little bit harder. And this is all just in time for our level 6 damage report. All right, let's talk about what damage is going to look like for us here. It's pretty straightforward. Right on round 1, we just get our elemental attunement going, draw, fire off 2 pistol attacks, holster, and then follow up with 2 unarmed strikes thanks to Flurry of Blows, moving up to within 15 feet first if need be, but probably pushing them away with our final unarmed strike if we hit with it and they fail their save, right? And then backing up so that we can stay as relatively safe as possible. Thank goodness we've got 40 feet of speed. After that, just rinse and repeat. We should have advantage on most of our attacks thanks to our Familiar and Vex, but at the very least, our second unarmed strike will not have advantage unless one of our allies is doing something to give us advantage. I'll just assume that 3 out of 4 of our attacks will have advantage, though I appreciate that it will sometimes be fewer than that. I always calculate average damage over a 4-round combat encounter, assuming that we've got access to all of our resources, so we should have enough focus points to flurry every round if need be. It's too bad that our unarmed strikes don't benefit from the archery fighting style. Would be cool if that affected all ranged attacks, not just ranged weapon attacks, but oh well. And so, against enemies with a 10 armor class here, we would on average do 37 damage per round, and against a 15 AC, it would be 33 DPR. And that's not amazing, but hey, that's the price we pay for improved survivability and an easier time picking our targets, right? And I mean, it is ahead of the all-day build and even the other range damage dealer, the Beastmaster, at least at those, kind of middling and higher enemy armor classes, as well as staying competitive with a couple other builds I've done to date at this level, so I'm feeling pretty happy about it thus far. Let's see where it goes from here. At level 7, now that we've got extra attack, you know what's coming, right? Yeah, I think more fighter levels. As always, you don't have to. There are a lot of goodies in Monk. A 3rd unarmed attack at Monk 10, it's a little far away. A better martial arts die at Monk 11, more feats, lots of good utility and survivability stuff, more focus points, but yeah, I mean, the next 5 Monk levels is a bit of a dearth of damage increases. Maybe that's worth it. Maybe you're ornery at fighters. But hey, if you're wanting to be a good damage dealer, especially with weapons, guess what? Fighters are really good at that. Big surprise. So let's take a few levels and see what it does for us. At Fighter 2, we get Tactical Mind, which lets us use our second wind to add a D10 to a failed ability check, potentially turning it into a success, and not using the second wind charge if it still fails. That's cool. But then, yes, the almighty Action Surge, which lets us take 2 actions on our turn once per short rest, and that's going to be some nice burst damage when we need it. Level 8, we would be a Fighter 3, and that means we get our Fighter subclass. I think any subclass would be good here, honestly. Champion plus Elven Accuracy means a ton of crits. 27% crit chance. Super fun. Eldritch Knight gives us even more spells, making us even more of a spell shot. I almost went Psy Warrior because I freaking love Psy Warriors, and the little damage bump you could get from Psionic Strike would be nice. Not to mention the additional utility that you could get, but that subclass is just better with a higher intelligence score, and as a monk, we just couldn't afford a higher intelligence score. So for me, yes, Battlemaster it is. Because I just love those maneuvers. They're so good, and they bring so much versatility and usefulness. We get to learn 3. They're fueled by 4 superiority dice, which are D8s. They reset on a short rest, and I think for me, the best one of the bunch would be Menacing Attack for this build. It says that when we hit with an attack roll, we can spend a superiority die to deal that D8 in damage and force the enemy to make a wisdom save or be frightened of us until the end of our next turn. And that's just a really great debuff to throw on an enemy, especially if you're trying to stay at range, since it not only gives them disadvantage on ability checks and attacks, so long as they can see you, but also prevents them from moving closer to you willingly, and that is just perfect for us who's trying to stay at range, right? Other than that, go ahead and pick your favorite maneuvers here. Trip attack could be a fun way to end your turn, like with a trip attack, knocking them prone, which could benefit your allies, and if nothing else, cause the enemy to lose, half their move speed standing up on their turn, making it less likely that they can get to you. Riposte could be a nice way to get an occasional attack with our reaction if a target misses us. Pushing attack could knock them back even further. Precision attack to try and turn a miss into a hit. Plus lots of potential utility or support or survivability stuff like Commander Strike, Commanding Presence, Disarming Attack, Maneuvering Attack, Rally, Tactical Assessment. Have fun with it. There's so many great options, and Battlemasters are just a great sort of bag of tricks, and I love them. At level 9, we would be a fighter 4 so that we can get another feat. Yes, I want Elven Accuracy. It's a half feat. It would bump our dexterity to 19 here for us, and it's such a good feat. It lets us, when we have advantage on an attack using dexterity or intelligence or wisdom or charisma, roll 3 d20s instead of 2, and that really does wonders for our hit and even crit chance, and I love it. Again, if you decided not to go elf, no worries. I'd probably go sharpshooter here instead, which is still decent. It's a half feat that lets you ignore most cover, keeps you from suffering disadvantage on ranged attacks made from within 5 feet, though we already had that from Gunner, so But then doesn't impose disadvantage on long range attacks either. Keep in mind that the pistol only has a regular range of 30 feet. Being able to attack at 90 without disadvantage would be nice, though yeah, our bonus action unarmed strikes can only be made from 15 feet out, so this is definitely a mid-range gunk, right, rather than a long-range sniper for sure. Still, if your DM makes a lot of use of cover, sharpshooter is going to be a must-have anyways, right? So worth considering. Okay, at level 9, it is time for our next damage report. Since last check, we've added a d8, I'm going to say once per round thanks to our superiority dice, right? Elven Accuracy for a better hit and crit chance, and yes, 2 more attacks thanks to Action Surge that I will add to the 4-round average damage, plus some nice potential utility, support, and even debuffing options. But against a 10 enemy armor class here, we would on average do 48 damage per round over 4 rounds, and against a 16 AC, it would be 45 DPR. And you know what? That's not bad. It's kind of middle of the pack compared to other DPR builds that I've done to date for this level. Better than I expected, if I'm being honest. And I mean, we've got some decent utility, decent survivability with a smattering of debuffing and supporting options even. Okay, this actually makes me really happy. Let's see if we can keep it up. At level 10, I feel like you either just go back to monk and probably stay monk for the rest of the build, and that's not a bad option as we've kind of already discussed, or you do what I'm gonna do and you go rogue. Why rogue? Well, mechanically, it's mostly for sneak attack, though I enjoy the utility and even kind of additional survivability features that we pick up. But as for like why our character might be taking rogue levels, I talked before about how maybe your character was sent to infiltrate and steal the secrets of gunpowder from that monkish monastery, right? Maybe, after so long with the order, you've been converted and are now turned into a double agent, sent back to your original commander or organization that you now realize are a bunch of bad guys to infiltrate them, and so must receive some roguish training from the ninja master of your order, who's named Snake Eyes. I don't know. You tell me. As a Rogue One, though, we get expertise, letting us double our proficiency bonus in 2 of the skills that we are proficient in. I always like to go stealth and perception personally, but take what works best for your character and for your table. We also get Thieves' Cant, which is that special coded language that rogues can use to communicate with each other secretly. And then we get 2 more weapon masteries, so pick your favorites here if there's another weapon or 2 that you want to be able to whip out once in a while. But yeah, the main reason I wanted to go rogue, of course, aside from wanting to be a ninja, is for sneak attack, which says that once on a turn, if we hit with a ranged or finesse weapon, check, and have advantage or hit an enemy standing within 5 feet of an ally, check, then we can add a d6 of damage to the hit, scaling with rogue levels. So yeah, even though there are some decent damage increases for monks eventually, we just get a little more, a lot quicker by investing in rogue instead. And it's not like rogues don't come with a healthy heaping of utility and fun, useful features themselves, right? So I think this is the route that I would go if I were playing this character in game personally. At level 11, we would be a Rogue 2, which gives us Cunning Action, so we can disengage, dash, or hide with a bonus action. We could already do 2 of those things, but now we can hide 2 if we want. This is the worst level I ever have.
This is the worst launch I ever had.
At level 12, though, we would be a Rogue 3, and that gives us Steady Aim. This lets us use our bonus action to get advantage on our next attack only if we haven't moved and don't move for the rest of our turn. Useful on some builds, but here, not so much. We do get our Rogue subclass, though, and I am a little torn on the route to go here. If you went Eldritch Knight for Fighter, I'd definitely consider Arcane Trickster here, especially to, keep scaling your spell slots, albeit at the 1/3 caster rate. If there were a spell to take that could increase our damage, you know I would have done it. But I think for this build, probably not. Still, spells are good for a heck of a lot more than damage, so it's not a bad call. Soul Knives are fun, but don't really work from this build aside from the utility. Thieves are also fun, and yes, I appreciate that they can be really powerful. If you've got the right magic item, or you're into crafting magic items and or spell scrolls, I might build around that feature one day. But for today, I think I'm gonna go with that old standby and first ever 5e character of mine, the Assassin. At this level, Assassins get a Disguise kit and a Poisoner's kit as well as proficiency with them, but then we also get the Assassinate feature, which gives us advantage on initiative rolls, very welcome, and Surprising Strikes, which says that we have advantage on all attacks against a creature who hasn't taken a turn yet, regardless of whether our Vex weapon hits or our Familiar is still alive, right? And if our sneak attack hits any target that round, that opening round, they take extra damage equal to our rogue level. And okay, sure. As I talked about in my first 2024 build, that Assassin expose, I mean, automatic critical hits, it is not, but at least it works regardless of whether the enemy is surprised or not, right? So it's more reliable. I really do wish that it were like 2 times your rogue level in damage here on the opening round. I think that would be just enough to make it still feel like meaningful and kind of potent, but not be OP. I'm probably homebrewing it that way if it's at my table, honestly. Anyways, we also do get a sneak attack bump here, so it's 2d6 now. Altogether, it's a decent little bit of damage at this level. At level 13, we would be a Rogue 4, and that means we get another feat. And since we're sitting at a 19 dex, right, we want to take another dexterity half feat. And while there are a lot of good ones, I'm very tempted to take Mage Slayer. It's quite good. I think in the interest of sort of damage overall, I'm going to say let's go Piercer here. Feel free to go another route. Piercer isn't the greatest feat ever for damage, but it's pretty nice, and it's even better for those of us with Elven Accuracy who are going to be critting more reliably, right? It's going to bump our dexterity to 20, and then it's going to tell us that when we hit an enemy with an attack that does piercing damage, we can re-roll one of that attack's damage dice, and then must use the new roll. That's going to be a little potential bump for our pistol, right? That does piercing damage, but it could also apply to sneak attack. If the pistol damage roll was great, but then we got a 1 on one of our d6s for sneak attack, we can re-roll it. Anyways, it's not a lot. It's a little, but then we also are told that when we get a critical hit that does piercing damage, we can roll 1 additional damage die for that critical hit. So, you know, with a pistol, that's going to be an extra d10 when we crit, which we will be doing about 15% of the time when we have advantage thanks to Elven Accuracy. Altogether, these are just a couple of minor bumps, but they are bumps, and we needed a half feat anyway, so let's do it. This all comes just in time for our level 13 damage report. Since last check, we've added a couple of d6 in sneak attack damage, plus 4 more on our first turn thanks to Assassinate, as well as capped our dexterity modifier and picked up some minor bumps from Piercer. Other than that, we've picked up some nice roguish utility. But against enemies with a 10 armor class here, we would on average now do 68 damage per round, and against a 17 AC, it would be 65 DPR. And okay, though we've scaled a bit, we've slipped a little compared to other sustained damage builds at this level. We're still staying ahead of the Beastmaster and that all-day build, the Soul Knife, not by a ton. Still, we're loaded with utility and versatility and other things, so I'm still pretty happy about where we're at. Let's see what it looks like coming down the home stretch. So at level 14, we would be a Rogue 5, and this gives us the new and amazing Cunning Strike feature. I wish that it didn't cost us damage to use, but it's still super cool. It says that when we sneak attack, we can choose something in addition to just damage if we give up a d6 of the damage from sneak attack to do it, right? Either force a dexterity save and trip them prone, or move half our speed without taking an opportunity attack, or force a constitution save, or give the enemy the poisoned condition for a minute, though they do get to repeat the save at the end of each of their turns. And I mean, hey, we can potentially stun, frighten, and poison enemies now. It's a cool little bag of debuff tricks that can be fun and potent against the right enemies. We also get Uncanny Dodge here, which lets us use a reaction to have an attack's damage against us. So maybe if it's not bludgeoning, piercing, or slashing slashing damage and we can't reduce it via deflect attack, we could use this. Or maybe if it's massive damage and taking half would be better than reducing it by a d10 plus our dex plus our monk level, right? It's another option, at least. And don't forget, we do get a bump to sneak attack here as well to 3d6. At level 15, we would be a rogue 6, and that means we get expertise part 2. Pick your favorites here, PYF, whatever utility or skill checks you and or your table need most. And then at level 16, we would be a rogue 7. This means we get evasion, that's always welcome. Lets us take no damage if we succeed on our dex saves against fireballs and things, and only half damage if we fail. But probably my favorite thing about the rogue changes for 2024, honestly, and this might seem crazy, but it's getting reliable talent at rogue 7. It's so much earlier than before, and it's so great for utility. It tells us that if we have proficiency in a skill, anytime we make a check for that skill and roll lower than a 10, the roll just counts as a 10. It's so awesome. And especially with 4 skills that we have expertise in now, like those really important skill checks, we're just never gonna fail. We also get what will be, for us anyways, our final bump to sneak attack, 4d6. Finally then, at level 17, we'd be a rogue 8, and that means we get another feat. And yeah, there are a lot of great choices here. I think I probably bump wisdom to 18 to improve our armor class and our monk DC for stunning strike and the push and pull of elemental strikes and things. Not to mention, you know, wisdom's always handy for perception, for saving throws, but if you feel strongly about taking something else, go for it. This then brings us to our final damage report. Since last check, the only real increases we've seen to our sustained damage are, unfortunately, a couple of d6s to our sneak attack and a little more damage once per combat from assassinate. We have picked up a lot of nice utility and defensive features though, helping us be more well-rounded and useful than ever. But against enemies with a 10 armor class here, we would on average do 79 damage per round, and against an 18 AC, it would be 77 DPR. So yeah, not a ton of scaling damage-wise. That's kind of the curse of the rogue, right? Like, investing more is going to give you something. It's going to give you a little bump. So once you start, it's kind of hard to stop, but it's rarely amazing damage bumps, unless maybe you can get a reliable reaction attack to trigger that sneak attack a second time per round. Compared to other DPR builds at this level, we've kind of slipped maybe even more, just a little bit by comparison. We're kind of keeping pace with that Beastmaster build and that all-day build, depending on the enemy armor class. Sometimes one's better than the other. We're still above the Soul Knife though, so hey, we're not bottom of the barrel. So, okay, let's bring it all together with some final thoughts here. The tier score for this build, if you take the damage they do against every enemy armor class that we calculate for at each of the 4 damage reports and just average it all into one big number, we end up with a 52, which is super respectable, putting us kind of very near the middle of the pack, maybe just slightly under the average. But again, these are builds that I've done to try and do really good DPR, right? So average is better than average. And yeah, it's by far the best ranged or thrown weapon build that I've done to date, no question. Even beating out that first elemental monk build I did, which I thought was going to be so strong due to the cheese grating shenanigans. Did I link to that yet earlier? If not, there's a link. The truth is, though, as we saw, the build was kind of a lot more competitive damage-wise at tier 1 and especially tier 2 than it was at tier 3 and 4. Now, to be fair, if we were building this with an eye focused on those later tiers, yeah, we could have done things a little differently. Getting to Monk 11 before taking rogue levels would have helped us look better at higher levels, or staying fighter to get a 3rd pistol attack eventually, or sure, taking a bunch of levels in a spellcaster to get us a nice damage on hit spell, like Spirit Shroud or even Conjure Minor Elementals if it were allowed at your table. But getting to those spells would have been a huge investment that would have left us largely languishing in the meantime. So while I considered doing it, and maybe would if I were starting this character right at a high level, if I'm starting at level 15 or something, but I'm just never a fan of making a build that looks amazing at high levels, but kind of has various points of suckage along the way, as most of you know by now. And hey, since most of us play the game at tier 1 and 2, often stopping before tier 3 or maybe just a little bit into it, right? That makes me feel even better about how honestly solid the damage is here for a fully ranged character. And then of course, there's the other stuff they bring. Mobility, fear, stun, potential poison later on, right? Survivability via our range and like deflect attacks, some fun dex-based utility, and a nice handful of cantrips. I think we get a lot of versatility and diversity in and power here. And when you combine that with some super solid range damage, I think we've got a great build on our hands. So I hope you enjoyed it, but that's the build for the week. I love you guys. Thank you so much for all that you do for me and for this channel. I really, truly appreciate it. I hope you have a fantastic day and a really great week and a Merry Christmas. And if you don't have any of those things, then I hope that you'll hang in there. Please don't give up. I hope that you'll do good and be kind, and that I see you again very soon. But until then, take care. Bye. Everybody was everybody was gun fu fighting. Those cats were fast as lightning. In fact, it was a little bit frightening. But they fought with expert timing. It's a little problematic, that song, isn't it? But man, like, what else can you sing for a gun fu video, right? I mean, what else? What should I have done? I tell you, it's Christmas tomorrow for you guys, anyways, not for me as I'm recording this, but probably should have sung a Christmas song, right? Are there any good like kung fu Christmas songs or gun themed Christmas songs? That sounds, I don't know, something from Die Hard. Anyways, there. At level 3, we would be a because I wanted to talk about sharpshooter. I'm all topsy-turvy. Right. At fight. Okay. That was a 45-minute detour where I realized I screwed something up with the build and had to rework it all. Man, I hate when that happens. Better to realize it now than after the video is released, of course. Okay, blah, blah, blah. Now, Randall.